Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
To be honest, when we came up with the idea for this segment, it was for days like this. Our guy, John Keim, Cakes, my good buddy, joins us to talk about the story he co-wrote with Seth Wickersham on ESPN.com, a leaked prospectus from the Harris Group that shows the potential for a financial windfall when they take over simply by removing Dan Snyder. John, I think this is your first time live on the show. Welcome.
Oh, well, good. Where are the trumpets celebrating that?
Anthony, where are the trumpets? Did you forget the trumpets? Anthony left his trumpet at home. What a shame.
Okay.
What a shame. So I know you can't give up sources and methods, if you will, but when all of a sudden you find yourself staring at this document, like what's going through your head once you see, one, like, oh my God, I have this. And obviously you're working on that with Seth, but also like seeing some of the numbers. What are some of the things that stood out to you?
Well, yeah, for me, it's looking at the numbers. And first of all, like the Harris Group prepares, my understanding is that they typically prepare a prospectus when you're looking for limited partners to invest because they come from the private equity firm world, and it's what they would do when they take over corporations or whatever, and it's what they've done in the past. Part of what makes this interesting is that you may be looking at more people needing to do this to buy into the NFL because the price of where it's going. So we'll start there. But as far as like the numbers that jump out is as much the tumble in terms of attendance and revenue, the local revenue, how much it had fallen, and then obviously their projections are going to be their projections, but they're pretty rosy, and I don't know that a lot of people would disagree with where they could go and the impact when they eventually open a new stadium as well. So, I think, like I said, so the big numbers to me, the tumble, like it's been like, I would say in the last 10 years, it's like a 50% drop in the local revenue. And I think they projected to go up by about 50% over the next 7 years or so.
Yeah, that was one thing that stuck out to me, John, is the stadium information. The first was that they, right. There is a chance to rename FedEx Field. And I just wanted
that's the other one.
Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of a point of clarification on the way the story was worded. It says with a change of ownership that there's a right to change. Is that something that FedEx
Correct.
would have to do, or is that something that the Harris Group could say, hey, we're in charge now?
Yeah, my understanding is that FedEx could get out of it if there's a change in ownership, and they believe they've been trying to get out of that. So I think that's where it would be. But yes, they can then change it. And then right now FedEx is it's 7.45 or
I think 7.6.
7.6. Thank you. All right, I have a lot of numbers in my head right now. So
I luckily enough have them on a computer screen in front of me.
So right, and so the projection could be as much as 30 per year, they believe, and so that's obviously a sizable difference, and that's why when you're looking at a return on investment, those are some of the things you're going to try and do right away. And then you brought up the stadium. I think that was the other thing that jumped out to me was their projection for revenue from a stadium doesn't begin until 2031. Now, that's noteworthy. Now, I will say this. That's a conservative timetable by them. And, they did even note on there that it could be earlier. So to me, that's like probably the latest they would look at it opening. But that's noteworthy because here they've been looking at 2027, 2028, thinking that once you get your place, you can break ground and it's 5 years. They're looking at it longer than that. And part of it is because I think they want to absolutely do their due diligence on it and not rush into a situation. So, it could be another year or so before they really find the place they want. I don't know, but it could be. And then it's like, then how long does it take once you break ground and what are you doing with it, how, et cetera. And I know Seth had talked to some people who believe it may even take longer than that based on some other stadiums that have been built over the last several years.
Right. John Keim, ESPN.com with us. And so that is the kind of the interesting thing, right? In the prospectus, it says this is kind of a conservative estimate. It could happen sooner. And then Seth talks to some folks, as you just said, that say not the way stadiums are going now. This could take even longer. And I think part of that is going to obviously depend on how much work has been done already, how much behind the scenes has whether it's Harris, Rails, Magic. Magic obviously talked to Wes Moore at some point recently. There's these numbers from the state of Virginia, so you'd have to think there's been some conversations with the Commonwealth on potential there. What sense do you have on how much work has already been done so they can hit the ground running fairly immediately on that? Not just in terms of where the location is, but what they want to build, because they have to decide, is it just a stadium? Is it stadium and practice facility, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, and I think if I had to guess right now, the practice facility would probably be separate from where the building is, depending on I could see a scenario where they have a stadium, whether it's in FedEx, where it is now, or even in the district, but the practice facility remains in Virginia. That is a definite scenario. But I think, until they're on board, we don't really know what their vision is. I know this is in talking to some people who are, who've been involved in this process. But as far as the stadium goes, like what it would entail, it's hard to really know. I know, listen, you're not entering into a situation like this without having some level of input being made or information being sought, right? And there are clearly people here who have been working on the stadium, Joe Maloney and Jason Wright, for a while. And so their information will help without a doubt. But, you're still going to have to go through and meet and feel comfortable with what meaning Josh Harris and whomever else is involved there. So while there would be information already known, and I think perhaps like the locales, Virginia, Maryland, D.C., could start getting their situations more clear as to what they would offer or what incentives or inducements, whatever. And, I think that stuff is already being done. So that will help. But these guys still have to go through the process. And it is a top priority for them. And I think that's why it's funny, because I was talking to somebody earlier on Harris' side and bringing up the 2031 estimate. It's like, to me, when there have been people still here thinking maybe 2028, it does suggest that they want to take a patient approach to get it right.
So you have been going to work in various Commanders, Washington football, et cetera, locales for the past 25 years. And I think one of the interesting things in the story that I will tie back to you going to work there, every day during the season for the last 25 years in a moment, is when Harris took over the Sixers. In your story, it says that they did about $88 million worth of upgrades on all kinds of different things, a lot of that at the practice facility. As you've watched that building in Ashburn evolve over that time that you've been going there and seen it through different coaches, GMs, now you'll be on your third owner here. Like, what are some of the things that you think they can do and should do immediately versus things that they might wait on to ultimately get a new facility for the players to call home every day?
Well, here's what I would say, Craig. I think if they come in and say, like, the practice facility will be separate, you can work on that right away. So I would invest the time and energy into doing that, because it's going to be a lot easier to find a location and then the area to build with that. So you could do that a lot sooner than you could a new stadium. It doesn't necessarily have to be tied into the stadium and the facility going to open in 2031. If you know where it's going to be built, or if you know that, listen, regardless of where the stadium is going to be built, this is where the practice facility will be built, I would invest the money there. Now, there's clearly some things that you could do in the facility that they have done over the years. With the field was a big one a few years ago. They have upgraded some of the kitchen, the cafeteria and all that. But I think there's always more you could probably do in terms of maybe. I know there's a desire to update some of the technology there, and maybe make it a little bit more state of the art if you can. But if you know you're going to move out soon, I don't know that you're going to see a great deal of investment, because you can build that again a lot quicker than you could a new stadium. And so to maximize your investment, you may want to do that. But again, that's something that it's hard to say until they're voted in and they can talk publicly about those plans. It's just kind of conjecture or speculation.
Right. John Keim, ESPN.com with us. Do you think, John, this is the hard-hitting journalism that we do on this show, the turf field with all the deer poop, can that finally go at least?
I think that thing's going to last until the bitter end. It's amazing for people who have never been out there.
Why?
Well, for here, you know what? I mean, I don't know, but
I don't know is the correct answer. There's no good reason.
Well, the reason why you don't do it now is because the cost involved, and they don't use it, and they have 3 fields there, and they've updated the other fields they installed new turf, and they improved the drainage. They didn't have the drainage system out there was really bad.
Oh yeah.
And in fact, it didn't drain. So you go out. There were times where literally there'd be like a foot of water. It'd be covered in water, and that was years ago, right? But that's something that I think you can, over the last couple of years, they definitely improved that. But with that turf field now, it just seems to be a place where when you have groups out there, that's where you're going to put the tents. And but it is not one that you want to run around a lot on.
No. What lasts longer, your career covering the Commanders, the turf field, or Keith Richards?
Oh God! I mean, Keith Richards will outlast everybody.
Yeah. That's the correct answer. That's 100%. Yeah. Robin Williams had a great.
Turf will be nice. Listen, they should almost whatever they do with that facility, and once assuming they sell it. Let's say they sell it. Whoever buys it needs to somehow preserve that turf field and just hold events on it once in a while.
Just put the team Hall of Fame there or something. Robin Williams had a great bit in one of his stand-up specials about how Keith Richards is going to be the last human being on Earth after a nuclear apocalypse with a bunch of cockroaches just looking at him going, hey, I smoked your uncle.
When you mentioned him, the first thing I thought of was it's like a cockroach. They're just going to be here forever. Not that he's a cockroach, but it's same kind of thing. So yes, I think he will.
Keith Richards is the correct answer. John Keim, ESPN.com, with us here on the Hoffman Show. Okay, let's do the thing that everybody cares about the most. On the football side of this, now that we have a little bit better idea of a timeline, we still don't know for sure. This thing could get done in Minneapolis. Unlikely to get fully done there, but it's possible, I guess. And then sometime kind of 90-day-ish window where this thing probably gets done. What is on hold right now for Ron Rivera and the football side, and what things can proceed?
Well, one of the things on hold would be the naming of the offensive line coach. So eventually it'll be Travell Wharton, but that's something they want to get approved. That would be an ownership approval thing, and so they're waiting for that to get there. So there's some coaching staff maneuvering. The staff is in place, but it's just more getting the titles, et cetera. That's on hold. You're not going to suddenly extend, I don't think, a Montez Sweat or Cam Curl right now until you get probably some clarity and direction from a new owner. But that's me just saying that it makes sense versus hearing it directly from them, right? So, gotcha. But that would make sense that it would be hard. Like if you're going to do a deal with Montez Sweat and you're going to have to, give a lot of guaranteed money or whomever, and whether it's him or Cam, you're not going to want to do that without a new owner's approval, at least to say, okay, yes, go ahead and do it, right? And, doesn't mean the guy has to say, well, wait a minute, I don't like how Montez rushes the passer. He needs to develop this move. He's not going to do that. But you do, it is a lot of money. So you do want to make sure that they understand why you're doing it. And so at this point, there's no rush because if you can be talking to Montez Sweat's side, for example, and understand and get an idea of what both sides can do or are willing to do. And then when the time comes, you can go to a Josh Harris and say, this is what we want to do. Is that okay?
So along those lines, as you said, Harris, I don't think is going to come in with strong opinions on pass rush styles. But it's very clear from this prospectus that you and Seth reported on today that they have a very clear vision of where they can take the business, certain opportunities. They have a clear understanding of a lot of stuff. How much
Correct.
do you think that they know on the football side? Because they'd be doing it from the outside. As far as we know, Ron Rivera, outside of maybe a quick hello, has not spoken to Josh Harris. There certainly hasn't been like a large debriefing at this point on the direction of the football operation, what has done and what is planned on being done should Rivera stay. So what kind of understanding do you think this group has of the football operation, and thus how long will they be evaluating before they make any kind of move, big or small?
That's a good question. It's hard for me to say how much. Like, what I would say is, from what I've heard for a while, is they're going to take the year to evaluate. I don't think they're going to come in and make any sort of rash move. So, I'm sure that they, if you're doing this, you're going to be talking to people about what someone else feels the situation is like. But I think if you're also a savvy businessman, then you're going to come in and see what your experience is with them. And so that has always been my understanding of what will happen, whether it's the football side or the business side. And keep in mind, too, again, if it doesn't happen until, let's say, July, well, you can't come in then and change things. It's not a good time to do that. And so, they're going to get the season to evaluate. So whatever they have, whatever preconceived ideas or notions, it'll be confirmed or debunked over the course of a year. So this group, whatever they think, this group will get a chance to prove that they should stay or go.
Yeah, the timing of that dictates, which, by the way, is, that's a whole separate rant that I've done on the show of the NFL dragging its feet throughout this whole thing, kind of costs the Commanders this offseason. But at the end of the day, we are where we are.
Yeah, and I don't know what they could have done differently. Like, you weren't going to get a sale like this in February. And
sure, I just meant like when all of this stuff came out, or even at the Wilkinson report, which obviously was very bad, even though it got buried. Like, they gave him the largest fine in the history of the league. There was clearly a lot there. Like, could you have forced a sale if the owners had the chutzpah to actually vote him out? This could have been done a long time ago. Versus
they were never going to do it over that investigation. That's so like it's what you always have to do with the owners is it's the pocketbook. And, it may not be the what people want to hear, but it's also the truth.
Sure.
So they weren't ready to vote him out at that time.
I understand all that. That doesn't make any of it right. I'm not saying you are saying that it does. That was the opportunity, and the opportunity cost from the football side is ultimately this has drawn out into now yet another full off season where the Commanders have had, January through, really November when he announced the sale and kind of went to London and never came back, through now where the Ron Rivera and company have been operating without an owner and just had to kind of do the best that they can. Last thing I want to ask you, John, I know you're a huge NBA guy. Obviously, we had so many basketball conversations out in the media annex over the years. Sixers just wrapped their season. The Devils had a very successful season. How much do you take out of this Harris Blitzer group's other sports and how they'll approach this? Or is the NFL wholly unique and you think they'll operate in a different way than they have in the NBA and the NHL?
I don't know that they'll operate differently, but I don't know that, I don't think approach changes, but I do think you have to be cognizant of the league that you're in. And the NFL is unique, and it's more powerful. It's more, it's just more. It's, there's more exposure. There's more attention paid to it. So you do have to understand that. And it's also, as you know, these organizations are put together differently. In the NBA, you need those superstars. There are certain things that you have to do to get the Joel Embiids or guys like that, because that's how you ultimately build a top contender. In the NFL, there's just, it's really about putting together. There's obviously more players, and the quarterback's a huge deal. But you have to construct it differently and take the different things into consideration, right? And so, but I don't think their approach will change. I think the approach should be is you hire the right people and you let them do their jobs. That seems to be, based on the people I've talked to, what they have done in Philly and New Jersey for the most part. Like, I don't think you're going to have Josh Harris in there telling people to change a draft grade on a quarterback, for example.
That never happened, John.
So I don't think you're going to have that. So I think like that. That's the approach that you take. Now, but I also think one of the things that you have to do here is make sure you have people who understand and know the NFL and can understand the rhythms of the season. What if you're on the marketing side, what you're asking players to do and when and why, or why it might not be a good time to ask that, for example. So little things like that, just understanding the rhythms. But that's also, like I said, so the NBA will be different than the NFL, different than the NHL. But I don't think your approach as an owner will change. Like one of the things, David Elfin had written a story for Bethesda magazine, I think it was, years ago, where he had talked to Mark Keim and Josh Harris. And one of the things Harris said in there is he did believe in setting up an organization with a GM and then a coach. Now, obviously, here's the coach and then the GM. Does that mean he's going to come in and do that automatically? I don't know. But, and if it's working this year, then you don't. But if they do want to change, I think you can look at that sort of a structure, right? So, I think the structure and the approach, the way you approach it, I don't think will change. But you do have to adapt and understand that the NFL is different than the NBA and is different than the NHL.
No, 100%. Also, I have had lots of chuckles over the last couple of days as Philly fans and people who just hate the Sixers because of the process have freaked out because they have won 50 games 4 times in the last 6 years and then flamed out in the second round in most of those years. If the Commanders win 12 games 4 of the next 6 years at any point in the next decade, or 4 of 6, and then just, oh my God, they lose in the second round of the playoffs, do you realize how happy this fan base would be? John, how happy you would be covering that many playoff games?
Yeah, no, it would certainly be different. Craig, I have never covered a team that has won 11 games in a season, in the regular season. I've covered this team since 1994.
Wow.
That says quite a bit. And so, yeah, and I know it's all perspective, right? I mean, I would talk to fans on the road last year, and I'd be like, I just want to win. I just want to see them win a playoff game. That's it. And, but once you do that, what's next?
Right.
Like I'm a Cavs fan. Was this year good enough? Maybe, but it won't be next year.
Right.
And you can say like, well, just look at how bad it was. Yeah, it was bad, but now the expectations have gone up. However, I think what's
Oh, no. Did John's phone? Oh, no, John, I think we got you now. Nope.
Sorry, yes, you got me.
There we go. Now we got you.
Yeah, sorry. So I would say I think the bar is kind of low. It's don't be investigated. Build a good product that fans can take pride in again. And for a long time, as you know, they haven't been winning, and they haven't been able to fans can't take pride in being fans of this franchise. And so that's what I think has to take place. And I definitely get the sense from dealing with people in this group that they understand where this fan base is at and what the things that they want to do to invest in that. And I know some fans are going to say name. That's not on the top of the list, but I think what they understand more than anything is the need. What they have to do is build something good. And if you don't, it's not going to matter.
Yeah, the honeymoon will end.
If they do, then that's what matters most. And for some people, they may not come back because they just got tired or whatever. But they also have to focus on also building up a new generation of fans.
Yeah.
And so that's where if you can build a winning team and create some excitement here. And I don't think it would be that hard. Craig, people here know, and the organization now know, this city was ready to embrace them again going into before that Giants game in December.
Yeah.
And then they lost. But they were ready to embrace them. So these people are ready to jump. My sense, talk to every fan, and certainly fans are going to have different perspectives. But I do think, if you can build it right, and and Dan Snyder's out, because we know for a lot of people that was a number one thing for them, that people will hop back on. I don't think that the love for football here is gone. I think it was just hellacious wearing out and exhaustion of losing, of issues, and then I also think, Craig, too, some of it was you'd have these hopes that would extinguish pretty quick. RG3 going to be here for 10 years, making magic, and then it's 1 year, and then that's it. Scott McLuhan comes here, and then that was a problem, right? Kirk Cousins does well, but then he leaves because the contract never was going to match up with where each side was at. So, you know what I mean? So, one thing after another, and then it's enough. And then the investigations, right? So avoid those, build a winner, and people will be back.
No doubt. And I think something that's pointed out in the prospectus and some other numbers, Evan Novi-Williams, our buddy from Sportico, had a great chart the other day. It wasn't really till Kirk left, and there's obviously other stuff that was happening. McLuhan, kind of at the same time. That was when the revenue fell off. So it's not that long ago that people were still willing to give it a shot.
Correct. Listen, it was the funny thing is that was the year where I think people just got tired of that whole discussion with Kirk, but which followed the downfall of RG3. And so I think people got worn out, but yes, you're right. It was, and if Alex Smith doesn't get hurt, Craig, who knows, does this really go down? And I've talked, I know people here think if Alex Smith doesn't get hurt, this group isn't even here.
Maybe.
In coaching staff. We don't know, but the point is they felt he was a good professional quarterback, and you could win 10 games with him, and then go out and win a playoff game or two, right? So, you're right. It's not a long time ago, and if I had been if you're a fan of this franchise, how are you not worn down? I give people here a lot of credit for sticking it out, because it's not just. We've all rooted for losing teams. I grew up in Cleveland. I rooted for a lot of losing teams. But it's all the other stuff. And it's just, you want to at least, the Indians would be bad, but you knew the organization was good and they're going to build something because you had trust in that, right? Mm-hmm. And so, but did you have that here? I don't think and I remember the word trust I would use a lot. They have to rebuild the trust. And so for the Harris Group, one of the things with top priorities is rebuilding that trust. And how do you go about doing that? And a lot of it is by your dealings with the public, with the suites. And again, don't embarrass the franchise.
Yeah, no doubt. Week 1 this year, hands in. All right, John Keim's covered this team since 1994. He's never covered an 11-win team. Cakes on 3, 1, 2, 3 cakes. I think that's the rallying cry. Here we go. All right, I think you have to go, sir. You had something to do. I've taken far more of your time than I anticipated, but it is always good chatting with you, and hopefully we can have you again back soon on the radio.
Thanks, Craig.
This is The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.